Serious, what is a seemingly harmless parenting mistake that will majorly F up a child later in life? I found that when my parents teased me about stuff I was clearly uncomfortable with, it made me tell them less later in life. I have a good relationship with my parents, but I don't tell them lots about my life because it's easier if they don't know/tease about it. Never saying sorry to your kids. My mom only just recently started telling me sorry when she gets worked up. It's built up such a resentment for her over the years, and I also have trouble saying sorry myself because of it. Tell your kids sorry, especially if you overreact to something they did. Treating your young child as a friend you're venting to. It's extremely traumatic to be your parent's diary. Not following through with your promises. If you told your child you were buying ice cream tomorrow in the hopes that they'd forget, and the next day when they ask you tell them no, they'll see you as unreliable. Ice cream is just the first thing that came to my mind. I'm sure someone else can explain better what I'm trying to say here without sounding so ridiculous. The belief that they won't remember because they're young. I remember. Never telling your child that you were wrong, and that you're sorry, just never once occurred. My father never once said I'm sorry to me. He was human, there were plenty of times he should have. My kids have heard from me plenty. I feel like most of these responses fall under seemingly harmful. A seemingly harmless mistake is rewarding your child with something when they do something they already enjoy. Take, for example, reading. If a child just enjoys reading, let the child read without giving any reward. Once you start rewarding the child for that act, their intrinsic motivation gets replaced. It's called the over-justification effect. Don't smother your kids. My mom quit having her own life the moment my brother and I were born. She was an incredibly devoted and loving mother, was very kind to us, but when we were born she stopped having friends, did not work, and was home every single day from when I was born to when I moved out in my early 20s. She was very easy to upset because she had no other source of self-esteem, and any time I screwed up, and I screwed up a lot, it was as if I had levied a very personal attack against her. In the last 5 years or so before I left, I don't think we had a single conversation that didn't drive her to tears, and I promise I wasn't that bad. I constantly felt cornered, and stressed, and fell into depression as a defense mechanism, and she took my resulting lack of performance very personally, creating a very treacherous cycle that was only broken when I enlisted, and finally got away. To this day I often feel like I'm a bad person who failed to live up to her love. Not creating a safe space for your kids to tell their secrets, and make mistakes. When I was younger, I excitedly confided in my mom about my first boyfriend, but instead of calmly talking me through this, she immediately brought my dad in the conversation, and they both yelled at me, and forced me to break up with him. If you qualify for food stamps, take the freaking food stamps. Do not make your kid live on macaroni and cheese made with water because we don't take handouts. Using them as props for jokes in public. Glad you got a kick out of it, Dad. Not stopping when your child says stop, whether it's teasing, or tickling, or resting. Kids who have parents that don't respect their boundaries always seem to end up being the biggest dicks and bullies because they've learned they don't have to respect other people's feelings. Not hugging your kid, or telling them you love them. You can feed them dinner, and send them to bed on time every night, and they're still going to end up with a personality disorder because you never freaking hug them. Mocking them, laughing at them. Adults do it to each other all the time, but kids who haven't been immersed in the background cruelty of our culture for years don't understand that it's just the language of the land, and not that they themselves are particularly unworthy of respect. Well, realistically, it'd be a helicopter parent. You always want to look out for your kid, right? Make sure they're not doing things they're supposed to do. Walk in without knocking? It ruins a relationship with a kid because even though you have a sense of privacy, the kid doesn't, and will always paranoid of anyone entering their room without warning. It ruins a kid. Would my mom let me do this? Is she okay with it? The saddest part of this question is that my mom had done so many things that everyone is saying is bad, not hugging, praising, telling me to suck it up, etc. So let me give one that I feel would have helped me out growing up. Do not be afraid to admit when you are wrong or when you make mistakes to your child. My parents would go out of their way to justify any mistake they made, and make it seem as if they were right no matter what the situation was. Gave me a pretty messed up view of right and wrong, as well as learning from mistakes, but was fixed by my grandma. It's a long story that I don't want to get into right now. Also, wow, 11K, and silver on my first ever comment. and it pertains to my lousy childhood, Ty. But on a serious note, I want to reiterate the importance of not only advice, but the consequences of not taking said advice. My parents never congratulated me on good grades, doing the right thing, etc. They would only say that's what you're supposed to do or you better keep it up, and threaten me if I didn't live up to their expectations. So now, as an adult, I'm insanely suspicious, and at the same time worried of people complimenting me or congratulating me for anything I do. Not giving them a factual and straightforward sex talk. My parents answered my questions truthfully, and at an age-appropriate level throughout my childhood, and I am extremely thankful for it. Others around me have clearly not been that lucky. Getting them involved in problems they have no control over. My parents felt the need to keep me in the loop regarding our pending foreclosure, and argue in front of me over which one was to blame when I was 10. What possible reason is there to share that with a kid? I barely slept for months. I was convinced the cops were gonna bust in at midnight, and throw us all outside. Giving into your kids' wants and desires without upholding discipline and consequences will give your kids a large uphill battle to climb later. I say this because my parents babied me a lot when I was young. I never had to do anything I didn't want to do. When I started getting bad grades I wasn't doing my homework, my parents would have conferences with my teachers so they could give me extra credit. I had a rude awakening in college when I realized how hard life is. I 100% love and adore my parents. And who's to say if they did discipline me more that I'd have turned out any different? Probably not. But you never know. But when I have kids I already know a few things I'd do differently. Pretty much telling you that whatever activity that you enjoy doing is annoying or dumb. I used to love to sing. I was in chorus, and would play my favorite songs over and over to learn the words. Not only did my sisters tease me for it, but my parents told me to shut up constantly. So I stopped singing. I must have been terrible, right? I sing when I'm alone, or jokingly with some friends. What really broke me was when I went to visit everyone for the holidays, and my sister said that she was surprised I never pursued singing since I seemed to love it so much when I was younger. I nearly started crying, and had to bite my tongue so I wouldn't scream at her for being one of the reasons I stopped. It's always funny for the ones doing the teasing, but it actually hurts the ones being teased, especially when it's coming from people who are supposed to love you. When I was 4, my parents adopted a kitten. Of course I had never seen anything quite so delightful before, and I could barely keep my hands off the little fur ball. So about 2 or 3 days passed. I get up in the morning, and walk out, and ask where is the kitten, and my parents told me that he died, implying that my roughhousing had killed it. I was terrified to touch an animal for several years thereafter. In fact, they had simply given the kitten back to the people they got it from. I grew up in a very strict Asian household. My parents were very strict on the never wake us up policy. To this day I get very anxious, and refuse to wake people up, in fear of being yelled at, and locked in a closet. I'm 22 years old. Telling your kid they are always a winner. We love our kids, and want them to feel special, but it's setting them up to be disappointed later in life when they find out not everyone can win. Let them feel the disappointments early on, and teach them it's okay. They'll grow up better able to handle the stresses of life. Telling them that the family members who are mean to them or neglect them, love them. Treating crying as if it's something only weak people do. My dad in particular used to yell at me for crying, which only made me cry more, which made him yell more, and you get the point. In high school I tried to bring up the possibility of me having anxiety problems that I'd spoken to the school counselor about because my friends made me go since they were worried. He told me I was just a drama queen. I can't express that I'm anxious or stressed around my dad because others have it worse. Even now I'm 21. And seeing a psychiatrist in a couple weeks because I've just felt so bad lately, and I would never let my dad know. I think I'd rather die than my dad know I've been seeing a psychiatrist, and discussing the possibility of me having OCD with said psychiatrist, which does explain a lot, and is actually kind of comforting for me to know, because he'd get so mad at me for being weak. Being overprotective as a parent, or just not listening to your children. I have a few. Thinking that whenever they open their mouth they're going to lie to you. Telling them that they're just being dramatic whenever they're actually upset about something. Telling them that they're being manipulative whenever they show their feelings, tears. Making them give physical affection when they don't want to. If Uncle Bob makes them uncomfortable, don't make them give him a hug. If Aunt Karen freaks them out, don't make them give her a kiss. Of course it's important that they be kind, but don't teach them that the feelings of others is more important than their bodily autonomy. If someone close to the family dies, Don't say to your children they're just sleeping, "Congratulations, you just created a lifetime insomniac." Severe punishments, like shaving the kid's head or destroying his toys/hobbies. My neighbor, also one of my closest friends, went through this. He is doing fine, but it's screwed up. Edit. People are talking about how these parenting mistakes are obviously harmful, but in the eyes of the parents of the kid, and their family in general, it's pretty normal, and standard. Telling your child that they have to finish all of their food. If your child says they're full, respect that. When you insist your child eat their food even when they're full, you're teaching your child to ignore the body's cue to finish eating and, instead, not stop eating until everything is gone. This can cause problematic food behaviors that they may carry on through life in a number of ways. Firstly, it can cause the child to not be able to recognize when they're full or not anymore, a problem many people face, hence the rise of the intuitive eating movement to help people be able to recognize when they're full again, which can lead to overeating. Secondly, it can encourage an all-or-nothing mindset, which can also lead to overeating. As an example, someone who this lesson was emphasized to may not be able to stop after just taking a couple of Doritos from a family-sized bag like others. Once they've started, they'll feel like they'll have to finish the whole bag because that's the thinking they were trained to have as a child. As well as this, it causes your child to associate a feeling of guilt with not finishing their food and, possibly, food in general, which can further contribute to problematic eating behaviors. Sticking through a toxic freaking relationship for the kids. It doesn't help. Part ways. Be good parents, spend quality time together with the kids, but don't stay together, and freaking hate you. Lives under the guise of it being for the kids. We pick up on your crap. It's a terrible example to set. Not having them do chores. My parents pushed me to be academic, so doted on me hand and foot as a kid to make more room for study. When you're too young and stupid to know any better, you think it's a blessing. When I moved out to uni, I didn't really know how to clean, when to clean, what to clean with, how to wash clothes, how to get them dry, etc. The only thing I could do is cook and binge drink. That's no way to bring up a kid, and it's a steep learning curve doing all that stuff for the first time in your early 20s. It sounds like a super lame answer, but make sure every kid does their fair share of chores. I went to my waxer and asked her something like this. She said that a 6-year-old girl come in crying with her parents. They wanted to get her to wax her legs for not cleaning her room. She wouldn't do it. Also, forgot to mention, but the waxer refused to do it. Discouraging them from asking questions. Yes, it can be annoying to keep hearing "but why daddy/mommy?" But I've met far too many adults who admit they stopped asking questions because as a kid their parents would shut them up or be like, "There he or she goes asking questions again." Inquisitive minds need that fostered. Because I said so. Saying I don't care who started it. I grew up with friends whose siblings would target the one with a bad temper, provoke them into a rage, then cry, and play victim when they got slapped. In this case, it does matter who started it. A parent has to make it clear that violence isn't okay, but neither is provoking someone into said violence. It doesn't matter that said person never hit or kicked while their sibling did. They never would have gotten hurt in the first place if they didn't encourage the aggression to begin with. Children are clever, and will find loopholes in their parents' rules. Parents need to be better, and snuff out that kind of BS when it starts. If they don't, they'll raise a manipulator, and a scapegoat. One will use them, and one will resent them. It's a lose-lose all because of a simple rule. Creating an environment where you tell your kid their feelings aren't valid just because they aren't the same as yours, or your kid processes their emotions differently than you. Angrily telling your kid they are too sensitive/dramatic/theatrical/hormonal/ etc. is just going to mess your kid up, and encourage them to bottle emotions up to avoid upsetting you, and is going to lead to major communication issues. Also, constantly pushing an intelligent or self-motivated child to work harder, and do better. You're setting your kid up to be a perfectionist, which can be incredibly damaging to his or her mental health in the long run. Always assuming the oldest child is to blame for everything. Telling your daughter that if a boy is mean to you, it's cause he likes you. The words, "Oh look who finally decided to join us," when referring to you coming out of your room when guests are over, way to ease your child into social anxiety. Never showing up for events. I remember my parents didn't come to most of my chorus concerts. It really sucked to see my classmates' families cheer them on while my parents were absent. I brought home one of my chorus program papers to show my parents, and I found it in the trash the next day. I was sad because I wanted to keep it, but seeing it in the trash, I didn't want it anymore. Edit. I love my parents, And I don't blame them for not showing up. They are small business owners, and it was hard for them to find people who could work for them whenever I had concerts or anything. It still hurt though. Frown. Also, the replies to this are very sad. I'm sorry that a lot of you guys went through similar experiences. Second edit. Also, my mom is a clean freak. She'll discard or move any stray papers laying around. She probably didn't think much of it. She might not have even realized what it was. She can't read English that well. It's her third language. After I told her, she apologized to me, so it's okay. I thought I should add that my little sister and grandma would come to them, but my relationship with my grandma isn't great. It's just not the same as having your parents there, if that makes sense. Anytime a child is playing with a child of the opposite gender, and they respond, "Oh, who's your boy/girlfriend?" that crap completely stopped me from even speaking to girls until damn near high school. Not letting them have freedoms, such as going out with friends, making their own friends, things such as these. I'm 17 and I'm just now getting actual friends outside of school. I was never allowed to go to anything as a kid. I know it's my parents caring about me, but it's hurt me more in the long run. It's caused some serious social anxiety. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell for more stories delivered to you. Thanks for listening. See you later.